And now I'd like to introduce Peter Lierni, who is going to talk about winning proposals that are engineered and not just written. Peter?
Well, thank you, Brenda. Thank you for the privilege to speak to the Chesapeake chapter and all the other members who are dialed into this webinar. Again, my name is Peter Lierni. I'm the lead principal at Solutioneering. And Solutioneering helps companies do the upfront thinking in advance of winning competitive pursuits. And I feel that this title's fitting. It's called Only the Strong Win. So let's talk about that. We know that in competitive pursuits, we have to get a competitive advantage. So how do we really do that? Well, I grew up doing delivery and then evolving into capture like many others have, but how we all get into capture is all different paths, right? But I always felt that besides being with the customer and building the team, what else should I have been doing? And so over time, I started to realize that winning competitive bids is not a transactional activity. It takes the work of the real work of thinking. And in our business, what we often do is we buy business intelligence from third parties. And if I could buy business intelligence from a particular vendor and Brenda could buy the same intelligence, who really has a competitive advantage if we both could buy the same data? Now, Brenda might be smarter than me, where she might ask a particular vendor certain questions and have more tailored data. But if I could ask the same type of questions, where's the competitive advantage? So competitive intelligence that we purchase is essential, but it's not sufficient. It just provides an efficiency for us. It's one of many inputs, as we know. And we get data information from many sources, again, emphasizing these third parties that we buy it from, but we still have to do something with it. And in our business, there is, the term probability of winning or P-win. But to me, it's always been like a fictitious number. It's like, to me, it's a hypothesis, an educated guess. Now I have to make it real. If I say my P-win is 55% or 60%, how can that really be true if there's 15 companies going after the pursuit? It's mathematically not feasible. So I make my hypothesis, my educated guess, but now I have to provide the real material evidence to make it real. And that means that we have to do the necessary work. Now in our business, we're all becoming increasingly dependent upon technology. And a lot of us, like myself, are the product of the public school system. And so I wonder if thinking is dead. And I'm emphasizing this word thinking a lot in this presentation. Is thinking really dead? Well, I don't think so. I believe that we are in a thinking person's business. Anybody can produce a proposal that's compliant and on time and produce an output. But to get an outcome, a competitive win for a high dollar value, mission critical, solution-based prime contract is a different story. And large is relative. If I'm a $10 million company, then a $25 million prime contract is big for me. So, and it scales that thinking, but we are in a thinking person's business. And that's what separates those who win from those who do not. Now, a number of years ago, I was winning competitive pursuits, and I was encouraged by the founder of my firm after we were successfully acquired to put my thinking down. Whatever you're doing, putting it down. And when I did that, I produced a framework. I call it the solution engineering framework for a reason. And what it does is it guides you on how the type of thinking that you need to do to win a competitive pursuit. And so now we're going to talk about this framework as we go deeper into this presentation. It's not a process, it's about a way of thinking. There's a book behind it, so there's a body of knowledge behind it that talks about many of the considerations, practices, and tools and techniques. And so when we look at a competitive pursuit, the business development life cycle, really there's uncertainty. And what we need to do is we need to squeeze that uncertainty down as quickly as possible so that when we see opportunity, we can make the right decisions to realize the benefits of those opportunities. When we see potential risks, we can make the right decisions to mitigate those risks so they don't become problems for us in winning the pursuit. Now, in our business, context is king. Context of our company, know yourself first, context of the customer, and context of the competition. And we have to bring that context together to address the client's needs at the right price. And when we take this context of ourselves, the company, and competition, and we get the right insights from doing the right analyses, that will help us formulate the right strategic actions to support the win. Now, in our business, we have many companies, they have processes and templates and things of that nature. But in my experience, process and templates are essential, but they're not sufficient to win. Okay, we are in a thinking person's business. That's what gets us to the win. So let's start to talk about now some elements of the solution engineering framework. We know in a competitive pursuit, we have to know the issues that are driving the procurement. Now we might identify 40, but we can't focus on 40. What are those top 4 to 7? What are the priority? And anybody can identify an issue, but the secret sauce is the why. Why is it an issue to the customer? And do we know the customer psychographics related to a particular issue in terms of their decision-making authority, like their role on a solicitation, their personality type, are they a visionary or an egotist, how they feel about our company, are they an adversary or agnostic or an advocate, that type of stuff. And all good things in life test.
All right, I'm fine.
And what we need to do is we need to test those issues with the customer. Likewise, if we understand those top 4 to 7 issues that are driving the procurement,
One moment, we're going to add. Peter, can you unmute, please? Thank you.
yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Now that we understand the issues that are driving the procurement, those top 4 to 7, we need to know the key factors. And the key factors are not the solution, but to help frame it. And we look at them from a technical management, personnel, and corporate experience perspective. Now, the key factors like table stakes and poker, anybody who's going to come to the table, address those issues, they have to bring those key factors to the table. Now, the key factors may appear in requirements like in Section C of a federal solicitation, but very often they do not. So we're looking for the top 5 to 6 technical key factors, 5 to 6 management, personnel, and corporate experience. For example, the solicitation might say that they want a program manager with 12 years experience that's worked in a program of similar size, scope, and complexity. But they will never say to you that they want somebody who has experience walking the halls of the agency, who knows the personalities, the politics, and the protocols of that building. But that's important to them, and you know it's important because they said it to you, but they'll never put that in the solicitation. So when you put your program manager up there, and right now I'm looking at Chris Brown, for example, on my screen, and you put Chris Brown up there, they know that, hey, Chris Brown knows the personalities of politics and the protocols. And why is that important? Because they need a risk-reduced transition. They need somebody who could quickly engage the stakeholders and ramp up quickly. So what key factors are is sometimes they're pushed down by the customer, and the customer wants to know you're listening. They may appear in a solicitation, and they're not. And other times you influence the customer with them, and they may appear in a solicitation and may not. But I tell everybody that if you do not know the issues, key factors, and all good things in life are tested, and you have not tested them with the customer, you should not be bidding the opportunity. It's like building a house on sand. Likewise, looks like I can't move my screen. There we go. Likewise, in a competitive pursuit, we need to know how the issues, key factors eventually align with our solution and the frame, and which comes out of our technical management approaches and the frameworks and methods and tools that enable those approaches, how they align. There should be a line of sight as we develop our offering from those issues and key factors that drive the procurement to everything that we're going to offer and everything that enables our offering. Now, in a competitive pursuit, there's the notion of winner benchmark that we know about, the ideal winner. But the ideal winner does not exist, even if we are the incumbent. And once we think we are the ideal winner, we are on a slippery slope to a loss. So like Vince Lombardi says, if you shoot for perfection, you hit excellence. So the issues and key factors sort of give you the ability to establish that benchmark of what are the top 10 attributes of the ideal winner, and they don't exist, and why are those attributes important? And again, always emphasizing the psychographics of the customer, how the customer might feel about a particular notion winner benchmark item, right? And is that customer a visionary? Are they an egotist? Are they an adversary of your customer, an advocate? What's their decision-making authority or their level of influence, et cetera? Now, in any competitive pursuit, winning is a team sport, and many a capture manager, he or she did what they were supposed to do, but it's the company that loses. And what do you mean by that? Well, what are those internal things that are ugly about everybody's company? We all have them. We don't pay our subs on time, so nobody wants their team with us in a recompete. We don't keep our word on work share, right? We have a habit of being slow in recruiting, things that are corporate services related. So I could be the best capture manager in the world, but unless the company is rolling along with us and supporting us the right way, those are reasons why we lose. So we have to look at the ugly part of us. We want to win a competitive pursuit. What I call design considerations, the internal challenges, conditions, and constraints. If I understand the issues and key factors and the ideal winner, the notion winner benchmark, and I know what my internal challenges, conditions, and constraints are, I am in a position to now do a competitive assessment. I get context from many and diverse sources. So we can do a SWOT analysis, bidder comparisons, fortified forces analysis, or black hat review. You could do one, some, or all of them. I encourage people to do as many as possible, and there's a reason. When we do a competitive assessment, the primary thing we're trying to do is identify our strengths and weaknesses and those of our competitors such that we can formulate strategies, highlight our strategies, minimize our weaknesses, exploit their weaknesses, neutralize their strengths, etc. Well, when we do a SWOT analysis, which we all typically do, we're thinking one way. We have a certain mental model, we're having a certain dialogue. But when we start to do bidder comparisons and we do apples to apples comparison, and we might compare our ERP modules against a competitor, and those comparisons are weighted, now we're thinking differently. Now we have the chance of squeezing out from our dialogue strengths and weaknesses for us and our competitors we might not have identified if we just did a SWOT alone. Likewise, when we look at fortified forces analysis and we look at power positions and where we do a black hat review. So I say do a SWOT, bidder, and port if you can as inputs to a black hat review. Now, discriminators. If we don't have one qualified discriminator, we shouldn't be priming the opportunity. And again, all good things are tested. And so what do I mean by a discriminator? What I mean by that is the other guy can't make the same claim. You know how it helps the customer, who it helps, why it's important to them, the benefit they get, ideally quantify the benefit, and or the risk it mitigates, and we substantiate with a proof point. All those things have to be true to have a discriminator. Differentiators and discriminators are not the same thing. Two companies might have differentiators, things are different, but when you're a discriminator, it's a whole different level. And to truly be a discriminator, it's an end statement. All these things are true, and it's tested with the customer because all good things are tested. Likewise, we all have gaps in competitive pursuits. We have gaps in our capabilities, our credibility, our customer context. We have gaps in our past performances. And so where we have the positives, which are qualified discriminators, and our negative gaps, because we might have identified 40 weaknesses, but what are those 2 or 3 big kahuna weaknesses that really meet the criteria of a gap, right? That we have to close. That's what we use to start to formulate our win strategy. What are those 7 or 8 documented high-level steps on how we're going to win that factor in the circumstances of our company and our offering, the balance like on a fulcrum, trying to get to that sweet spot, those 2 or 3 qualified discriminators. And again, if you don't have at least one qualified and ideally tested with the customer, you shouldn't be priming the opportunity with those 3 or 4 major gaps that are showstoppers, and we're looking for the trade space. We're making trades in the formulation of our strategy on how we're going to address those gaps and emphasize those weaknesses. And that's really what we mean by formulating a win strategy. Now, when we come to win themes, in my experience, win themes do not make you win. Government evaluators do not even know what they are. But in my belief, they are essential but not sufficient. What I care about is not that you threw some win themes on a board or that you're going to get together at a meeting and try to brainstorm and win themes. What I care about is show me how you got to them. Show me the supporting analyses that you did to substantiate those win themes. Now, we know a theme is a feature benefit proof point. And we know there's two types of themes. There's the win themes, the meta themes that transcend our offering, and the many, many proposal themes that will help substantiate them. However, if that win themes feature is not discriminating, it's a weak win theme. So if you've qualified discriminators using the criteria that I gave to you, you really get a twofer in the formulation of the win themes. And so what I care about is, how did you get to those win themes? Materially show them to me. Show me the analyses that you did to get to them. Because if you cannot show the analyses, then you're not going to have the evidence to substantiate them. Because whenever I did a competitive pursuit as a capture manager, my customer was the proposal team. My customer was the solution architect. My customer was the technical writers and the SMEs, because I was doing the analyses to prepare them to contribute effectively to response. Now, we look at the solution. The solution is never a technology. And once a technical person throws a solution up on a whiteboard, they say, this is the solution. We use this at Department of Education for SecDevOps. We're going to use it at HUD. Wrong answer. Because the most important thing in a human relationship is empathy. It's not communication, it's empathy. Because if you don't sense I know it's important to you, then what's going to happen is you're not going to listen to what I say. So the solution is a set of things bound together by the mortar, which holds it together, which is our win themes. And it's the partners we brought in our team and the sound rationale to why, the past performances we put forth, the leadership team we put forth, i.e. the key people, the tech approach, the management approach, the frameworks, methods, and tools, the staffing solution, and the pricing. That's the solution in our business. And so what I have always found in my experience is what makes us win are our proposal strategies. I break those into two types, big G for big G ghosting and little g for little g ghosting. Big G ghosting is what we do to shape and influence the deal before the customer goes silent. That's where we can have 80% of the effect. And little g is what we materially do in the formulation of our offering and in our materially in our response. Now, I don't mean the Gen Z version of ghosting. I mean the version of us who are a little older, like the invisible hand, Adam Smith, right? But when we develop our proposal strategies, there we are identifying the strategies that allow us to highlight our strengths, minimize our weaknesses, neutralize the other guy's strengths, exploit their weaknesses, counter how they might neutralize our strengths, counter how they might exploit our weaknesses and more. And I break them up into the big G and little g. That's where the thinking really occurs. But you can't get the strategies unless you do the analyses. That's the bottom line. You can't get the strategies. So in my world, if I have a win strategy and then I have the other proposal strategies, I have a traceable, irrefutable, defensible, and explainable way through my analyses that I've done to show you why this is a strategy in terms of why we're highlighting a particular strength or why we're going to try to exploit a weakness of a customer. So just like in law and science and medicine, we are in a business where the government is depending on us to solve their hard problems. Anybody can write an output that's compliant on time and produce an output. But to get an outcome, you have to think, particularly if we want to win the mission critical, high dollar value prime contracts. Now, our solution, again, is a set of things, and we have to answer in a traceable, irrefutable, explainable manner why our company. Again, it's the partners, the leadership team, the staffing, the pricing, past performance, the tech management approaches, and the framework, the methods and tools. That's what we're trying to eventually answer. Why that question? Now, when I did capture, I was always doing analyses. And that came out of just because of how I grew up doing delivery. I was always analyzing things with my clients. So when I came to do capture, I realized, hey, I have to do analysis to support what I'm going to do to make this win, because my C-suite was entrusting me to try to win this deal. That was important. So I say, for our partners, let's have a sound basis of why we think we want a partner on the table. And after that team agreement is signed, we have them, then let's do the necessary analyses to squeeze out of them as many strengths as possible, right? Because what we're doing is we're going to do due diligence on a partner and then squeeze out as many strengths for them as possible. Why? Because from Mr. Bob Lofeld, who many of us have benefited from reading his books over the years, he taught us years ago about building a strengths-based inventory. Well, where do we get those strengths from? You can't get the strengths unless you do the analyses. If we think that smart people are going to write those strengths in there, the analogy is like building security into your software after you already deployed it. You got to design security up front. You got to design your strengths in up front. And you can't get those strengths unless you do the analyses. So analyze your partners before and after the teaming agreement's signed to squeeze out strengths. Make sure your past performances are complete, current, and up to date, and do due diligence on them. Never assume past performance that for HUD is going to be good for the past performance for education, because it's empathy that's important. And then after we do that due diligence, we have to squeeze out of that past performance as many strengths as possible to start to build that strength-based inventory. Likewise, our key personnel, okay, that we're bringing to the table. Make sure the resumes are complete and current, do due diligence on them, squeeze out the strengths. So I have strengths for my company and even weaknesses for my company, which I troubleshoot. I might turn into strengths, going to the strengths-based inventory. I have analysis of my partners, my past performances, and my key people so far, contributing to that inventory of strengths that we're going to allocate to support an annotated requirements-driven outline, right? Likewise, when we look at our technical approach, that solution architect is my customer. I would have been able to educate him or her with the visual blueprint of a win in my past and the strategies and other artifacts to enable them to do their job. That is the role of capture manager, right? To do the thinking and show the evidence of that. So when that solution architect says, this is the technical approach and which I prepared him for, he or she is now also squeezing out of that technical approach as many strengths as possible, adding to that inventory we're building. The same thing for our management approach, same thing. And then we need to think about the frameworks, methods, tools, and techniques and processes, and even facilities, right, that we're using to enable our technical and management approaches that always trace back. We always have to have that line of sight back, that digital thread back, that material thread back to the issues and key factors, okay, that are driving everything. If you can't show the evidence, then you haven't done the work. And I always tell people, you'll make a point later on about PowerPoint slides and gate reviews. Likewise, our staffing solution. Hey, analyze, if I had dealers bidding and I had 50 people in the staffing solution, I'd say make sure all the resumes are complete and current. And then we would analyze every resume, we would pull out the numbers and we would add those numbers up. Oh boy, 80% of our team has a CISSP on this security contract for the FBI. Oh, 75% of our team has more than 12 years experience working in the FBI doing SecDevOps. You can't get those numbers unless you do the analyses. And when you get those numbers, that's where the strengths come from. That, because when we win, it's like whoever gets the most points win. It's like a basketball game. Again, our staffing solution, our technical solution, our price to win, we know have to be in alignment. They have to be harmonious, right? And there's a strength element of that. And that tech approach and that management approach and that pricing volume, we're always looking in a staffing solution. We're looking for that sweet spot, trying to make that right balance, right? When people say to me, and I wrote an article on this not long ago, we lost on price. I say, yeah, oh, really? Well, maybe you lost on price because you didn't discriminate yourself enough and you didn't do the upfront work and upfront thinking. You produced an output, right? Something fast and dirty. So keep on throwing stuff against the wall. the government will quickly know, and they're human beings, they have biases and prejudices because we're all fallen creatures, that you're just throwing junk at them. And so they'll look at your cover and they'll just push it aside because you have a track pattern of not doing the thinking up front. Now it's the evaluation criteria, right? We're looking at section M. So when we look at those factors and sub-factors, right, we're always looking, always checking back from those original issues, key factors, all the way through the notional win benchmark, our discriminators and our gaps, and our win strategy, and the proposal strategies, and the inventory of strengths. Do we have the strengths to score the points against the evaluation factors and sub-factors? Well, if you don't got the strengths in advance of the writing, what are you writing to? What are you writing to if you don't have the strengths? So we are in a business where the government looks for strengths according to the FAR and DFAR. And if we think that smart people are going to write them in, then we're sadly mistaken. That's why I'm not a proponent of proposal reuse libraries, because people are under the gun and they get sloppy. If you want to win, you got to do the upfront work. There are no shortcuts. And even when people talk about AI coming, there are no shortcuts. Man and woman are still in the loop. We got to do the upfront work. So to build that inventory of strengths, as Bob Lofeld taught us years ago, you have to do the upfront analyses. That's how we eventually show the value that we're bringing to the government in this particular case, and applies in the business realm too, right? We're bringing to them. Now, again, I emphasize, purposely, redundantly, we are in a thinking person's business. Issue key factor analysis, doing a notional win and benchmark, competitive assessment, proposal strategy formulation. This is the kind of thinking that we have to do to win the bid, because we want to answer the ultimate question, and it's the most important question in a competitive bid: why your company? And we want to answer that question in a traceable and irrefutable, defensible, and explainable manner. Now, I alluded before about how I feel about gate reviews. In my experience, before I started doing capture, I would start to see capture managers and even business developers, a little bit more to the left, do bi-weekly BD meetings and gate reviews, every 2 weeks, month after month, and they're showing these slides, and there's nothing behind the slide. The PowerPoint slides look good. They're a really great guy. Everybody loves them. They show well, they present well, and guess what? There is nothing behind that slide. And then we wonder why in our business that people on proposal teams have health issues and marital problems. And I say that jokingly, but those people are our customers. So what is behind the slide? And we've all been there. We talk about that handoff between capture and proposals, the valley of death. And the reason is because there's nothing to turn over. The upfront work hasn't been done. The work is not the stuff that's on the slide. The work is the stuff behind the slide. Show me how you got there. Now, we talked about PWIN earlier. Well, in my world, PWIN really doesn't mean anything. All I care about is, I'm gonna pick on Chris Brown again because I see his face, is Chris Brown doing the right things? Is he doing them well? And can he show evidence of them? That's all that counts. That's all that counts, because in math we learned y is a function of x. So my world is, if we initially get together and the people smarter than me say, well, our PWIN is like 55%, therefore we should bid this. To me, that's an educated guess. That's a hypothesis. Now, when they assign me as capture manager, my role is to do the right things, do them well, and be able to show the evidence of them so a third person can check me, just like you're checking something in science and in medicine and law, right? Showing the proof, because I'm taking care of my customers, the people downstream. We think that if we hire third parties, and there are many great third parties in the North and in this country that help companies win competitive pursuits. However, if we as buyers have not done our work up front, at best, what they're going to do for us is give us a compliant output on time. It's a team sport. We can't buy somebody to help us in and take us across the line to the win. If we're paying a business developer and a capture manager many months to gather the context, they need to be doing the thinking, the analyses up front. we all know that companies get overwhelmed. So when we do bringing that third party in, we bring something in for them to work with. That's the point I want to make there, that we're in a thinking person's business. And then we talk about, well, gee, Peter, all this stuff, it's such a lot of work. How do you do it? Well, the most committed win, and I emphasize the most committed ethically win, because anybody can be committed and do unethical things. So the most committed ethically win. But how do we get efficiencies at what you're describing? Well, a few years ago, this thinking was encouraged to be put into a software. It was automated, right? We call it SET for short. And it is a software that's SaaS, and companies are asking for it on-prem, that helps you do this necessary upfront thinking in advance of the writing. It's essentially a tool of tools. It helps optimize your strategies. It helps align your organization. It helps automate your efforts. It's not a CRM. It's not a proposal workflow tool. It's not a natural language parser. It's a new capability in the market that helps us do the thinking. It's automation of the kinds of things I've been talking about. It helps you build the visual blueprint of your win, right? And it helps you build a data lake of proprietary intelligence specific to your company, because that's your crown jewels, not what you buy, but what you buy and you get from many other sources. You do the analysis and you get those insights and make the strategies. Those are your crown jewels. I was part of 3 acquisitions. The only one that was successful was the first one, because every company that acquires a company seldom gets a return on investment, because what got you to the win gets lost. This helps preserve it. We're now in this new hybrid work environment. How do we get the same intellectual rigor in the upfront thinking that we used to get before the pandemic? The software enables that as well. The last thing I'll say is CRMs are like course tunes in an old radio. SET is more like a fine tune. It works with that to help you get more focused on helping you get more downstream in the business life cycle to answer that question, why your company. There's a video for SET. Don't have time to show it now, but if you have the chance to watch this presentation later, you can hit the link. And also at the end, there's some links where you could access the video. So what I want to take away is that, big takeaways is that we are in a thinking person's business. If you do not have the right strategies and strengths in advance of the writing, then what are you writing to? You cannot score the points in a competitive bid without doing the necessary upfront analyses to formulate the strategies and develop the strengths. And the solution engineering framework is simple. It's a powerful, deliberate, collaborative, engineering-based approach to designing winning proposal solutions. Plus, it's all automated in something that we call SET. And with that, I will take questions. I'll be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. And I will go into passive mode, and you have it, Brenda.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Peter. You might not have seen me while you were doing your presentation, but I was standing up on my chair clapping like this.
Oh, you are?
I was, yes, thank you. So can I
Thank you.
take the first question? Well, and I'd like everybody else to put their questions in chat, please. And I really liked one slide you had a few slides back about setting up your data lake. And, you know, I am a huge fan of curating your data. And do you have any good suggestions for people who want to set up their data lake for their company to make sure they have meaningful data in it?
Well, it's very interesting because I was having that conversation with some people this morning.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of companies right now that are producing products using generative AI, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's scraping. And the limitation there is, unless you have a very large data set, you're a very large integrated large data set, it's hard to scrape. So my question becomes, what are you scraping on? What's the basis for your scraping?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when we talk about SET is, if we bought competitive intelligence from a third source, I'm gonna pick Chris Brown again because I see his face, and he's the capture manager, and he went to industry days, and he spoke with the customer, and he did his own research with congressional research and GAO and many other sources, and we came to the tables, and we did a competitive assessment, and one of the techniques we did was a bit of comparisons, and we got an insight in terms of a strength of our company. Well, that strength, once it's written in the proposal, it's lost. Because if I give you a written proposal and I say, Well, show me the strength. Where's the strength here that we used to win that opportunity 2 years ago? You can't tell me. But with SET, what's happening is that strength, that source strength, before it was contaminated by putting into that proposal, right, is preserved. Oh, that it has a digital thread. This strategy traces back to this and issues of factors with this client. So that's what I meant by the data lake. So before you scrape your artifacts using generative AI, you should have a sound basis for what you're scraping against. So that's all I want to say with that. Hopefully I answered your question.
Indeed. And I also want to make sure, if Peter, if you put the set link in the chat, some people might have some access to it. And if I get it, what I usually do is I record this, and probably about by an hour and a half, it will be up on the Chesapeake chapter's LinkedIn page. And I'll make sure that I also put a link to SET in that LinkedIn post.
There's two links.
Oh, thank you very much.
One's to the website of the Solutioneering, which talks about the framework, our consulting business. And the other one is about the SaaS we developed. And that's the later one set. But any more questions? I'll be happy.
I do have a question here. I got DM'd on a question here for me to ask you here. Another question: how do you get executives away from that business development meeting where we review the charts? It seems to be ingrained.
They won't change. They won't change. They won't. Because people don't change. People don't like to change. It's not in their nature. Okay. And so regardless, okay, whatever's on that slide, you have to have what's behind it. Okay. Now, when we use our software, what we're doing is building a visual blueprint of the win. So what I showed you, it's automated. I'm building, and when we had our first licensing to our software, they stopped, they did change. They had to be able to change, and they were successfully acquired. They were using that large visual blueprint in lieu of their old gate reviews, their slides. However, we're actually doing it such that our software, if you look at the videos, it'll spit out a PowerPoint deck, because people won't change. But what's more importantly is that when I do an analysis and I collaboratively do it, and we enter the data in our software, the data is moving now. It's moving to support a subsequent analysis. It's going into the data lake. It's helping build the visual blueprint of the win. So SET is a collaborative tool that helps us do strategic analysis.
Peter, I have another question here from Allison. Was there a solution engineering book? And if so, could you please tell us about it?
Yes. If you go to Amazon, well, actually, if you go to the first link that says solutionengineeringtool.company, you can order the book there. If you go on Amazon, if you enter Peter Lierni and Solution Engineering, it'll come up. You could order the book there. I always tell people that if you're in the National Capital Region and you meet me for lunch, I'll give you a copy of the book. Right?
That's very kind. That's
yes.
very kind. I have another question here, another direct message question. You mentioned the topic, we didn't win on price. How do you make sure from the get-go, from the very jumpstart after the pursuit decision is made, that you're going to win on price? How do you set it up for success?
The question was, we didn't win on price. What I meant by that was, correction. The point I was making was, they say, we lost because of price. And then I say, oh, really? And my experience is, in most cases, you don't lose because of price. You lost because you failed to discriminate your value. That's what I was trying to say. So in full disclosure, I am not a pricer or pricing expert. What I'm saying is that if you do your due diligence, you do your upfront work, and you identify your value, and you substantiate it well in the ways I've been trying to describe.
Awesome.
You'll be selected for that reason. If they lost on price, if you lost on price, they went to the lowest person because you didn't discriminate yourself. That's what I meant by that.
Okay. All right. And I do have one last question. People are direct messaging me here. So thanks very much for your questions, everyone. It's that today we see a great belt tightening around the Beltway here and around the nation. How can we, you had so many great ideas, Peter, you know, some for people who are on a budget, how do you get the most bang for your buck? Any good lessons and things that you should attack first in your presentation to get the most bang from your buck?
Well, first of all, I feel that tools, processes do not make us win. It's culture that makes a company win. Hire the right people, put them on the right seat in the bus, have the right set of core values in the company that make the company that you don't put on the website, the ones that you use to hold yourselves accountable, and then do it very often. People don't want to do the work. The work is the thinking. And you talk about winning, is cost a lot of money to win business. The truth is, there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts. You got to do the upfront work. But if you have the right culture, you have the right committed people, you make the right kind of investment in them, and you're doing the necessary upfront thinking, and that's some of the points I make in my book, right? Then you have a higher likelihood of winning because it's culture that wins. So if you're a capture manager, you own it, you're accountable, right? But it is a team sport. So hopefully I answered that question. So when it talks about money and belt tightening, at the end of the day, I'll always go back to, you could tighten all you want, you can spend all you want. It's culture that wins. I'm sharing a way of thinking, but I will never put that over culture.
Well, Peter, do we have any other questions for Peter here? If not, I'd like to thank Peter so much for coming. This was wait a minute, I think I have one more here. This is okay. You said all good things are tested to prove the content efficiency and effectiveness. Is this always applicable to winning?
I believe so. Okay. Because if I do my homework, I never want to assume that I know the customer's issues. I want to go ideally talk with the customer and test it, not saying, hey, I understand these are your issues, but word it in a thoughtful manner. Like, for example, are you concerned about your next cloud migration, right? Whatever case, how you want to word it, okay? But you got to test. You have to test the issues, key factors, because that's the basis for what everything is built upon. That you have to test that you understand what the issues are and why the issues and what has to be brought to the table and why it's important to them. You have to test what you think is a discriminator. Is it important to them? That's right. And those are all enablers of winning. If I just assume that I know their issues, if I just say, hey, this is a discriminator, right? And I don't test it, because the most important thing in a human relationship is empathy. It's empathy. And that's why I say test it. So those are enablers of wins. Companies want to throw out things really quickly and get things out there and play a numbers game. They're hurting their brand. The companies that are deliberate, don't take shortcuts through the work, those companies, in my experience, are the ones that win. Those are the ones that companies want to acquire.
Excellent advice, Peter. I'd like to thank you for coming here to Chesapeake chapter and presenting these slides to us. They were just outstanding. Everyone's saying great presentation in the chat session here. So I want to thank you again. And if you'd like to see a recording of this message here, it should be back up on the APMP Chesapeake chapter LinkedIn site and YouTube channel in about an hour and a half. So once again, thank you, Peter, and thank you for everyone who attended today. Have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. It's a privilege. Thank you. Bye-bye.